again, this is Doug Smith. We have a very special edition of Portsmouth this week. This is from Founders Brook Park in Portsmouth, celebration of Anne Hutchinson's 425th birthday. I just want to welcome you to Portsmouth and this celebration of Anne Hutchinson. What I want to do is just turn you over right now to Jim Seveny, who is the Vice President of our Town Council. He's here representing the town today, and he'd like to give you a little welcome. Thank you.
Well, let me start by saying welcome to Portsmouth. Give me a show of hands. Who lives in Portsmouth? All right, well, thank you for coming. Everybody else, welcome. We're glad you're here. We hope you have a great time on your tour. I'd just like to say a couple of words about our founder, and then I'm going to turn this mic right over. My name is Jim Seveny. I'm the Vice President of the Portsmouth Town Council. And on behalf of our Town Council and our residents of Portsmouth, I want to officially welcome you and hope that you have a good time today as we all celebrate the 425th birthday of our founder, Anne Hutchinson. Our founding document, which, by the way, if you haven't looked at yet, is there's a replica in that rock right there. It was signed in Boston on March 7th, 1638 by a group of followers of Anne Hutchinson, 23 men. They'd been banished because they followed Anne Hutchinson. They were all banished from the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and that was for their belief in support of the religious views that Anne Hutchinson espoused, which apparently made everybody else angry up there. Their objective was to set up a new colony, independent, Christian in character, independent in governance. Still considered, the Portsmouth Compact is still considered to be one of the first documents in the New World that severed both political and religious ties with Mother England. So our founders and their families came here by boat, first to Providence, got some help from Roger Williams, who founded Providence, and then they continued on here through the Mount Hope Bay. Right out there, there was an inlet that used to come almost to this spot. Over the years, between construction and development, it's hard to tell anymore, but we are quite close to Mount Hope Bay. And they came to this place because they were looking for a source of fresh drinking water right there. And so this became their public meeting place, and their families built homes around here, including Anne Hutchinson and her husband William. Several years after they got here in 1641, her husband died, William died, and Massachusetts Bay Colony, there was a concern that they were going to continue to harass Anne Hutchinson and her followers. So Anne decided the following year in 1642 to move her family away. And they moved to a place called New Netherlands, which is basically the Bronx. They were there for about a year when she was killed. There was issues with the Native Americans in that area, and she and most of her family were killed when they moved out there. She was 52 years old, but she spent 4 years here in Portsmouth. She was a key leader in our early political and religious life, and it's fitting that we're all gathering here today to honor this independent and strong-willed woman and to pay our respects to Portsmouth's founder. So thank you once again. Welcome. We're glad you're here. There's other stops in Portsmouth today, and I think you'll find that the town has tried to keep very close to its pastoral and agricultural beginnings. It's a beautiful place, and I hope you can make the most out of it. And I hope you get to come back and visit us again soon. Thank you very much.
I'm with the Friends of Anne Hutchinson. In 1996, or 95 actually, we realized that there was nothing to commemorate Anne Hutchinson on this island. So we know Founding Brook was here and the plaque was here. They commemorated, I believe, in 1960 for the 300th anniversary of Portsmouth. It's a very important document, and I'd like you to take a look at it when we walk around, and we will soon during lunch. When I first came to Founders Brook Park, I noticed Anne Hutchinson's husband was listed. They were all men, but none of the women. Anne Hutchinson was not listed. So we got enough interest on this island to have a memorial, and it was modest because we wanted just enough, and we did it by a signed parchment, and it went out 14 feet and had almost 500 names. Still hear me? And it was mostly women, but no banks, no, churches, and it was $1 here and 25 there, and we got just enough. And then I have pictures in the book of women sewing it up. There was little pouches of prayers and herbs to commemorate her as the midwife she was, and the mother of 14 children, and her wonderful work as a nurse, herbalist, and a midwife for the women of Boston. But anyway, there were even baby teeth sewn into this beautiful parchment. Then we had a dedication ceremony, and you know what happened? The women wanted to bury it. So a beautiful thing was put in the ground, and it's here underneath the garden. You're going to, at least the Boston people have certainly heard a lot about her history the last 2 days. And most of you know her history, I believe. You're local. And you'll hear more at the library, because the historian Jim Garman will talk about what's happened and why people moved up to the southern end, down to the southern part of Newport. I just would like to say that we have a tradition here, so the women will not be lost. We have tried in the last 20 years to amass the names of the women attached to the men on the plaque in any way, whether they're related or whether they're wives or whether they're servants. And we have about 14, and we like to read their names out. I don't have the drums, but we just read out their names too. And I'm asking friend Barbara Finelli, and we're going to read the names of the women that are kind of unsung. There, I'll do this in the middle.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
With all three of them.
Hang on.
Oh.
We have 2 microphones. Just hold that.
Okay.
So
In
women
front
will
of
not
whoever's
be
speaking.
forgotten.
Okay. Mistress Mary Coddington.
Mistress Elizabeth Clark.
Mistress Anne Marbury Hutchinson.
Mistress Mary Cogshell.
Mistress Elizabeth Aspinwall.
Mistress Anne Bradford Wilbur.
Mistress Bridget Hutchinson Sanford.
Mistress Catherine Hamby Hutchinson.
Mistress Faith Hutchinson Savage.
Mistress Mary Dyer. Mistress Susan Auding Sherman.
Mistress Elizabeth Ballston.
Mistress Susan Hutchinson.
Mistress Rose Carrig Clark.
Mistress Mary Stevenson Hall.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that, and they thank you. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Michael Stephen Ford, who had everything to do with the garden here. But I want to say one thing that I realized that it's not said much. Anne Marbury Hutchinson was a founding mother, but she was also the founding mother of the founding fathers. She died, was massacred in 1643. The founding fathers that we refer to as, Jefferson, Washington, Hamilton, they're born a century later in the 1740s. I like to think that they learned a lot from this first generation of settlers. I think, personally, they learned 2 things. that we work best with tolerance. You know, when they were booted out of Boston by the Puritans, they came to Rhode Island, and Rhode Island was known soon as a place where it was religiously tolerant. We had Roger Williams, we had William Blackstone, one of my favorites. Um, and of course, we had Anne Hutchinson and her followers. After she was booted out, several women were booted out, and they felt like they had cleaned up Boston. Of course, they'd also booted out the wealthiest and most educated people, too, that came here. But I'd like to think that the Founding Fathers found out two things: that we work best under tolerance, and people that came here were Anabaptists, Baptists, lost Puritans, Quakers who were killed if they went back to the Boston area, even the Sephardic Jews from the Lisbon earthquake came here and were left alone to celebrate their own religion. So I think it's tolerance, and I think that's the hallmark of Rhode Island. And I like to remember her as the mother of tolerance. And I'm so glad we're all here to commemorate her. And I'm going to turn this over to Michael Stephen Ford, who is also a friend of Anne Hutchinson and related to all of them. He is a Rhode Island scholar. He knows genealogy, botanical business, and he's going to talk about the gardens he planted, because they're very special gardens. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Valerie. Can everyone hear me okay? Well, I'm very proud of my heritage, as Valerie just alluded to. Anne Hutchinson was my 12th great-grandmother. Mary Dyer was my 11th great-grandmother. Roger Williams was my 12th great-grandfather, and a slew of others, too. When you come from that pool, there's only so many old families that were there. And my lineage came down through the Dyers, and then the Dyers married the Slocums, and then they married Wells, and then it went on a few more generations where I'm the 15th generation. And I hope you'll all come up to the library to see the art exhibit, because I'm also an illustrator. I'm a multifaceted person, but I went to RISD out of high school, and I'm an illustrator, and I did an illustration of 10 generations of our lineage, from all the daguerreotype photos to the present, and it's on display in the library, and with a key to the genealogy. And I got a little obsessed with the genealogy, and I ended up producing this entire manuscript here. Which is probably going to fall apart now. But it took me 15 years, and about 5 years into it, I met Valerie DeBrule after reading Yves Laplante's book, American Jezebel. And those who went to Boston got to meet Yves Laplante, who's one of my cousins, distantly. And I read about Founders Brook Park, and I came here. And I saw this place, and I said, wow, you know, I'm an herbalist like Anne Hutchinson was. I'm not a midwife, but I went, after leaving art school, I went to the University of Rhode Island, where I stayed for 13 years and earned 5 degrees, botany, biology, classics, and then a master's in pharmacognosy, which is natural product chemistry and drug origin of plant development, plant-derived drugs, and education. And I didn't go into the pharmacy industry. I chose to educate the community about what my ancestors were doing and about medicinal plants. And I started a company that's now it's actually in its 25th year this year, Apollo Botanica. We manufacture all natural herbal products, and you can get them at all of the Whole Foods and health food stores and natural markets and salons, etc. But that's enough promotion of myself. But that's how I got involved. And I met Valerie and said, we need to have an herb garden here. And they'd said they'd always wanted to have one, but nobody stepped forward to do it. It's a lot of work. And I live an hour away, so I put in these gardens multiple times, actually, because of various weather conditions. And on hot weeks like this, it has to be watered every day. We're looking for volunteers to water the garden because we don't have any. And just a hint, if anybody's interested. And so I planted the garden with plants that are midwifery plants, herbs that would have been used by colonial families to raise their children, and some herbs that are popular today in medicines. And we also put in some ornamentals to beautify the park as well. I'm not the one who put the Anne Hutchinson garden in the shade. It was already over in the shade under the pine trees when I arrived. So there was only so much I could do over there, so I moved the rest of it over to the rock where the pudding stone is. And Valerie sarcastically calls it the men's garden and the women's garden. But it was all put in by a man. No, but I'm tolerant. Anyway, I'm really glad to have done that. That was 10 years ago. And, you know, it's really wonderful to see all of this happening and to have the Anne Marbury Hutchinson Foundation forming and doing this 5-day event. I'm really thrilled to be part of it, and I hope that you all enjoy it very much. The last time we were here, it was in 2013. We had a large event where all the benches were donated. And so this is the first time really that we've had a major event here in 3 years. So I'm really glad to be part of it. Thank you very much. Oh, and I wore my special Pelham Bay Park t-shirt. It says Pelham Bay Park, last stop. And someone who was doing work in my yard with a bunch of guys, when they left, I found this t-shirt in my backyard. And I said, oh my God, you know, what was the chances of that happening? So I thought I'd wear it today.
Welcome to our inaugural Anne Fan, our founding mother's yearly celebration. I'm Eric Nielsen. I'm the president of the Anne Marbury Hutchinson Foundation that works for women's education, women's health, and gender equality, as well as bringing role models to young women and girls that they can be mentored by into becoming strong, productive women that aren't quiet when they have a great idea. That describes my mother to a T. She was the genealogist that led me to find that I was a descendant of Anne. And I thought it would be fitting that we should celebrate her on her 425th birthday. And so the idea began. I found Devin. We started to collaborate. We found Valerie and Toby. And things just started to snowball into what we have today. We've just finished 2 days of wonderful meetings in Massachusetts. The first one underneath her statue on the Massachusetts State Grounds. Opening remarks by Michael Dukakis. And we had a second day where we met at the New England Historical and Genealogical Society, where we had 3 historians talk about Anne and her meaning today, as well as what they thought of the trial and so forth. So we've had a great time. This is just an extension. This whole day is a celebration of strong women that can be honored for producing and creating ideas and projects that are not only worthwhile, but to be honored and awe-inspiring to younger women to emulate. So I welcome you to the celebration. I hope you have a great time. And let me introduce Devin Marks, who's the event planner, and we can get down to brass tacks.
Thank you, Eric. I said without a microphone earlier, thank you for being here. Blessings, grace, and prayers are what we need in a first year with an event like this. Anne Hutchinson turned 425 sometime this week, right? The 20th was her baptism So we can only guess when she was born. But last night, at the close of a full day of programming, as Eric mentioned, at the Genealogical Society, with 3 of the leading scholars in the world in Puritan feminist history, we concluded at Carey Nation, our kind of hub in Boston, our favorite restaurant right near the Capitol, that has kindly donated food and drink and sponsorship, yada yada. They designed our poster, which I should probably get over here. If we rounded out the evening last night without thanking people, and just pinching ourselves with the thrill of what was ahead, which was rolling out with the Anne fan caravan today, and having an opportunity to meet you and introduce new Anne fans, like my daughter's little raccoon, to your lovely park, to the history of your community, and to the important experience that was the founding in the early stages of Rhode Island. If we didn't have a chance to introduce folks from out of town, folks from New Jersey who flew in or drove in, folks from California who came in, folks from Texas, I'm not even sure, folks from New York. Dick Furiano and his wife behind us came in from Bronx East Chester. They took a break from planning their full day of programming as well. If we didn't thank people like that, if we didn't ask for a little bit of grace when speed bumps hit an event, and if we didn't send prayers in Valerie's and Michael Stephen Ford's direction, it would be raining right now probably. The wind would be blowing and people would be hungry and angry. So thanks for coming with an open heart, open hands. Whether Anne family or Anne fans or scholars, researchers, statesmen, thank you, thank you, thank you. This first year started 2 years ago when Eric somehow found me on Facebook, I think, and said, in 2 years there's going to be a 425th birthday of Anne Marbury Hutchinson. I want to have a birthday party in Boston. And I was a stay-at-home dad at the time, watching this young lady, and we had just visited this park on a Daddy Lily Grace Day. We didn't come with Ricky the raccoon. He had not joined our family yet. And this place was empty, but it was beautiful. It was a surprise. I had just finished Yves LaPlante's book, American Jezebel, and I used that book instead of Let's Go Boston or Let's Go New England or Voters. I used that book as my guide to New England. And as I finished that book, I impulsively said, Lily Grace, we're going to go to Anne Hutchinson's home. And we drove here, and she peed up by the cars. We saw the little brook, and she immediately wanted to get in it and start playing because it was hot. And then we started reading the stones that I didn't even know were here, and it was just breathtaking. And it shocked me to know that, as ignorant as I was of New England history, it shocked me to know that there was anything going on with Anne Hutchinson out here this big. Little did I know you just finished the 375th, so it got bigger, obviously. But this was just a beautiful afternoon and a treasured memory for me and my little munchkin. And that experience and my first phone call with Eric, Dr. Nielsen, kind of set this tumbler into motion when he introduced me to Valerie DeBrule, and then she introduced us to Toby Liederman. That circle of friends tried as best we could to coordinate today and the 14 or 16, I don't even remember anymore, events that are 5 days in 3 states on the inaugural run of the Hutchinson Trail. The discussions about, today over wine at Greenvale Winery, the discussions over lunch, the discussions in cars or in vans or under trees, sweating and chuckling, those are the discussions that are going to shape what this becomes year after year as it grows. I know you've probably, a number of you, how many of you have been here before for an event like this, by show of hands? How many of you, it's your first time? Oh, wow. Wow. There you go, Valerie. Thank you so much. That is so encouraging. So it's about half-half, 2/3 new, 1/3 again. Just to give you a sense of the scale and scope of what's going to happen in the next years, if Dr. Nielsen and his prediction of next year's event happens. We started out at the State House with former Governor Michael Dukakis, who pardoned Anne Hutchinson in 1987. It was a publicity stunt to a degree. He was running for office, but he pardoned Anne Hutchinson and got her statue placed on the grounds of the Capitol. 9/11 happened, and they shut that down. No one's been able to walk up to that statue without special dispensation from the Pope and the grand hoo-ha. Well, one way or another, through friends, through ideas, through people's Rolodexes, through people's heart and generosity, this all volunteer, no profit being made organization started to come together. And Joe Kearns Goodwin, as a young man in Boston, an attorney, and he played the unofficial history-loving lobbyist for me to ensure that we could start the ball rolling with the State House event. Does anybody recognize the name Kearns Goodwin? I see nodding heads. Yes, his mother is Doris Kearns Goodwin, and his father is Dick Goodwin, former presidential speechwriter for LBJ, JFK, etc. Well, that young man opened doors quickly. And within 2.5 weeks, we had approval to be on the State House grounds. And then things started really kicking into gear. Eve LaPlante, who wrote the amazing book I recommend to everyone, and we have copies here at $10. You're not going to get a better deal than that. A generous anonymous donor underwrote those. So $10 for a $15 book, right? Eve was kind enough to start introducing us to people like Joe who could make other things happen. And then one scholarly conversation led to another party idea, led to another dinner selection, led to another, oh, we should do this, that, and the other. And Valerie remembers those earliest calls. You know, fast forward out of the State House event, and we went right into a full day of programming yesterday that was world class. And if you couldn't come, and I know most of you didn't, we recorded it all with 3 video cameras in high definition. I produced TED Talks. Has anybody heard of a TED Talk before? Okay, so I produced TED-like events. I trained TED-like speakers. I trained TEDx speakers, and I trained TED speakers. You wouldn't know it from this presentation right now, but I've had 3 hours of sleep the last 2 days. And so we shot those events, those moldy old book author conversations at a library, historical society, or whatever, as though those were TED events. And we'll have 2 cameras here today as well, because camera angles matter to young people today to get them engaged around history. I call it hip stories from our past. So we shot all those events yesterday with 3 video cameras and often 2 still photographers, one of whom is here today. Where's our volunteer, lovely photographer? Aha! Young lady, thank you. The thinking being that coming out of this event, for those of you who could not be in Boston and will not be with us in New York, you can experience it virtually through video. And we can promote the deepers out of this next year with all the stuff we need to tell a story. Video, still photography, logos, posters, sponsors, partners, treasured partners like Friends of Anne Hutchinson, and the Portsmouth Historical Society. Doug, I remember our first phone call, my word. That seems like 6 years ago. It was probably 6 weeks ago. None of this would be possible without the heavy lifting, the vision, the firm hand on tiller and oar that was this little ship moving through 5 days, 14 events in 3 states along the Hutchinson Trail.
Thanks very much for being with us, and we'll see you on Portsmouth This Week next time.